kind of getting in the way of my dates. Maybe that's a good thing. I am going to just talk a little bit about this virtual environment that we are having the meeting tonight in, and then do some compliance things for the purposes of the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. I'm glad we were able to, at least so far, make this work. I am recording this, both the audio and through our PA system, and I'm also recording the full meeting via Zoom, the Zoom platform. CNET is here, dialed in. You may see the name on your screen, CNET Matt. So Matt Burns with CNET. He's going to also record, and I guess they'll do some kind of a broadcast out on there during the regular viewing schedule of this, of this meeting played back. So appreciate everybody bearing with us and participating in this new environment. I'd have to say this is probably the first time where our chambers are empty for a meeting of the elected officials, probably since we were incorporated. So, we're still, but we adapted pretty quickly. For the purposes of the Sunshine Act, one thing that I need to do is just verify that all of the elected officials that have joined are able to hear and able to participate verbally. And the Sunshine Act is the Pennsylvania legislation that requires public meetings be conducted in public with allowance for participation from viewers at home. So we have a number of ways folks can do that. You can enter questions on the chat if the chair will, is going to acknowledge those questions. You can participate by unmuting your phone when it's time for citizens participation in the agenda items that we have, or through citizens input. And then on the other side here, I've got our conference bridge going, and I apologize if you can hear a little bit of the hold music, but in case anybody wanted to dial in, I made that option available so that there's a local number, because I think all Zoom gives you is long distance phone numbers. So folks can participate if there is need for the conference bridge. We'll also use the conference bridge as a backup for our meeting. If something should happen to the video feed or to the Zoom platform, I'll ask everybody to just dial the township main line, which is 814-238-4651, and then extension 3799, and that'll take you into our conference bridge. That's also on the agenda, in case you didn't get a chance to write that down, but it's extension 3799. So, Mr. Miller, I'll just go down through the roll, and then if board members can just say present, and then I'll acknowledge if we have a quorum. So, Ms. Danini?
Present.
Ms. Stevens?
Present.
Mr. Mitra?
Present.
Ms. Strickland?
Present.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum that has acknowledged they can hear and participate in the meeting, so I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda is citizens input for anything that is not on the agenda. If anyone wants to address the board.
One thing.
Okay, who was that?
Rhonda.
Rhonda. Okay, Rhonda, go ahead.
Okay. We walk a lot and we see a number of like college age students hanging out and building fires in cars. So obviously they're coming from different places. I know that the 6 foot, between people isn't a law. I don't say anything to them, but I also am concerned. And I'm wondering, do you just walk on by? Is there any way that something could be put out to remind people? And this is we walk both the borough and the township. So I think I've seen it more right at the edge where the borough and the township meet, in a house there, right, kind of both places. That's
I think I'll ask the chief if he could address that. I think that's.
Sure. We have been getting a lot of calls on things like that. So what we try to do is a little bit of education.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of legal things that I can do about it. One of the important things is Penn State has done a pretty good job sending information out to the students through different social media, emails, things like that, to keep them apprised of, as I said, the social distancing and the ramifications of having parties. Over the weekend, we actually had a fairly large party that we ended up citing the resident that was hosting the party, and that will be referred to Penn State for further sanctions.
So, so should, I don't want to bother the police if I don't have to, but is that something, and I wouldn't want them to get in trouble necessarily, but I like the educational piece. And I'm wondering, is that something that would make sense to call about or not?
I mean, if it's a small group, they look like they're not doing anything too crazy. It's one of those that the issue that we run into is if people don't listen to us, then all of a sudden we create this confrontation that really is unnecessary. So, if it's something that's a loud ruckus party or something like that, where looks like they're not being really responsible, then call us. But if they're just kind of sitting in their backyard, I would say not.
Yeah, okay. That's sort of what I figured.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else care to address the board on items not on the agenda? No, hearing none. We'll move to the approval of minutes for the March 16th, 2020 regular board meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes. Second.
Okay, motion second. Any changes, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, I was muted, and so I was just
okay.
saying aye. Yeah.
Okay. One thing I would ask, if you're voting no on something, say no, rather than waiting for me to say all opposed and then say aye, because sometimes there's a delay and your aye comes in after the chair says any opposed. So when we're doing these virtual meetings, be sure to say no if the vote is no. That'll keep it from getting into a question of, well, what was your vote? So, okay. Next is special reports. Dave is going to report on the COVID-19 response.
Thank you. As Mr. Miller indicated this evening, I'd like to provide a brief update to the board and anybody viewing at home with the township's response, as well as the response to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. As you all well know, this situation is very fluid and it evolves almost daily. So this information is current as of April 6th. But as of tomorrow, things may change or there may be additional developments. We'll continue to put those out as they evolve. Township operations have been reduced only to critical business functions. This means that certain operations, such as brush and leaf collection, have been suspended for the entire month of April at least. Most office staff has been working from home since the declaration of the stay-at-home order from Governor Wolf's office. Offices remain closed to public access, but the township's phone lines are being rerouted to remote staff during normal business hours. Residents and others who have a need to contact the township are asked to call the main line as usual or to email staff using contact information that can be found on the township's website. I also want to extend my appreciation to everybody who has remained patient and understanding of any delayed responses during this time. Police operations remain at full service. Additional protocol for the police department and all first responders is in place to limit exposure and prevent the spread of COVID-19. As many of you know, one of our police officers did test positive for the virus last week. While the test results only came in recently, the officer had been out on leave for longer than the requisite quarantine period and will continue to remain on leave as recommended by his physician. I'm happy to report that the officer appears to be improving, and I ask that everybody join me in wishing him a full and speedy recovery. While the department and township have been employing additional precautionary measures for the protection and safety of staff and the public since this pandemic began, the confirmation of a positive case on our staff has precipitated the deployment of further safety protocol to prevent additional exposure. On another matter, the COVID-19 pandemic has prompted the Center Tax Agency to extend the 2019 local earned income and net profits tax due date to July 15, 2020 to be consistent with state and federal actions. The 2020 first quarter estimated earned income and net profits tax due date has also been extended to July 15th. Center Tax Agency will not apply penalty and interest on 2019 tax return payments or 2020 first quarter estimates until after July 15th, 2020. The 2020 second quarter estimated earned income and net profits tax due date remains July 31st. As of now, there have been no changes to the due date for real estate taxes. The current discount period ends on April 30th, 2020. The last day to pay real estate taxes at face value is June 30th, and the last day to pay timely for the year is December 31st. Any payments after June 30th will be considered late and a penalty will be applied. Payments after December 31st will be considered delinquent and referred to county collections. Should any of this information change, we will issue a prompt and timely notice to residents. If you didn't get a chance to write that down, it is also available on our website under the tax information page on the finance department. Effective last week, the Center County Refuse and Recycling Authority has suspended curbside collection until further notice of recyclables. In response, additional remote drop-off locations have been deployed throughout the center region. In Ferguson Township, additional drop-off facilities have been placed at Fairbrook Park and Tudeck Park. Both are easily accessible and conveniently located to allow for social distancing and safety precautions when accessed. Residents are asked to ensure that the appropriate bins are being used to deposit the recycled material. A full list of the remote drop-off locations in the region can be accessed from the township's webpage, as well as the Center Region Ready Facebook page and the Center County Refuse and Recycling Authority's webpage. So there's multiple ways to see where all of those additional bins have dropped, and any bins that are out that have always been out are still where they are. So in Ferguson Township, there's one at the Lions Club that's still there and still operational on PA Route 45, West Pine Grove Road. Curbside refuse is still on schedule, curbside refuse collection. However, additional precautionary measures are in place by advanced disposal, including the requirement that all trash collected be placed in proper trash bags that are tied and secured. This is to prevent any potential exposure or transmission of the virus to those handling refuse. Last Monday, the Center Region Emergency Management Council initiated a Level 2 virtual activation. Since its activation, daily briefings have been facilitated by the Center Region Emergency Management Coordinator, which includes representatives from Center County agencies and utilities. Just today, we're going to every other day meetings, but if there's a need, we can initiate those to daily briefings again, reinitiate those into daily briefings. This additional communication has provided for increased information sharing amongst our regional partners so that everyone has access to critical life-saving resources. In addition to regional efforts, I've activated the township's disaster recovery plan and placed our disaster recovery service on alert. Should the township further reduce its service levels or have any additional changes in protocol, the latest information will be provided on the township's webpage and through social media. Additional efforts will be made to notify residents via the CNET bulletin board and other traditional media outlets. However, given the evolving nature of this response, I strongly encourage those viewing this message to use the township's website to receive the most current information. There is the ability to sign up through our constant contact listserv to a listserv that's specifically been generated for information related to the COVID-19 pandemic response. You sign up for that for email alerts. You'll be given all of the notifications related to the township and regional responses to this pandemic. To conclude, I want to thank everyone viewing this message for your understanding and patience during these unprecedented times. The Board of Supervisors and I will continue to evaluate our protocol and procedures in response to changing conditions of this pandemic. When conditions permit, we will begin to evaluate the process for the reconstitution of township operations, and additional information will be communicated through various media outlets. Please direct any questions you have for me through email at my email, which is my first initial D like Dave, and then last name Pribulka, Pribulka, at twp.ferguson.pa.us, or by using the Contact Us form on the website. You may also reach me using the township's main phone line at 814-238-4651 and speaking with the receptionist. This concludes my report. I can respond to any questions from the board or the public at home.
Any questions for Dave? Okay, hearing none. I did want to add one thing to, oh, Laura, did you have something? I think you're muted.
Our
There
our
you go.
brush and leaf collection are canceled for the month of April, right?
Brush and leaf is canceled for April. That's correct.
And burning leaves is illegal, right?
That's correct.
I'm wondering if maybe we could send out or just a reminder, like a gentle reminder that leaf collection will begin again and to not burn leaves.
Sure.
Thanks.
Lisa.
I wanted to get back to the initial question about reporting of groups that are congregating or people having parties. Some of the complaints that I have heard from residents about that are maybe younger people, even younger than college age. So I was like high school or middle school, maybe even, I'm not sure. I was wondering if in one of the meetings that either you or the chief is a part of, if you could encourage the school district to maybe remind parents about monitoring that kind of activity when the kids are out. Because I think like the chief said, Penn State has done a good job of communicating that information. It might not hurt to also ask SCASD to just continue to reiterate that. I have one other additional question. I'm not sure if it's more on staffing at the emergency management level, and I'm not sure if now is the time to raise that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to know if there was if the hiring, I thought there was hiring of an additional emergency management person. I'm trying to recall exactly what the
The
status.
assistant emergency management coordinator, deputy emergency management coordinator.
Is that moving forward at this point?
Yeah, hire's been made. Actually, I guess this is, well, I'm not sure if it's public yet, so I won't say who the hire is, but there has been the hire made. Chief, do you know if it's, am I able to?
I don't think it's public yet, but I don't know.
Ah,
really.
Then I won't say it. I'll leave it to the Center Region Emergency Management Coordinator to announce officially announce the hiring and who the successful candidate was. But I do know that did move forward.
And is that part-time or full-time?
It's a part-time position, up to 20 hours per week, I believe.
Okay. I had another thought and maybe concern about depth of staffing there, and also that trickling down to municipal levels in depth of staffing should there be some type of illness, this or something else which could affect staffing levels at the emergency management agency, or like I said, trickling down to municipalities. And I'm wondering if either that position, if there's been any talk of moving that position to full-time at this point. My other thought had been with the retirement, timely retirement of the outgoing COG executive director, Jim Steff, if there had been any discussion of possibly asking him to be retained on, an as needed or consultant basis should staffing needs arise. He's a real wealth of information and could probably fill in any number of agency head roles that would need to be backed up.
Yeah, that has been done. The executive committee, the last meeting where we actually did the contract with Eric as the new director, we also approved a contract with Jim to consult and a rate for that. And that will be pretty much at Eric's discretion with a request that he afterwards provide an explanation to the executive committee of what he needed for Jim to do. So that has been approved.
Great, thank you so much.
And as for the assistant deputy or the deputy emergency management coordinator, there's no budget to move that individual full-time. there hasn't been any discussions about moving that individual full-time. As I said, they were just hired only within the last week or so. So the purpose for that person is to kind of help staff special events and be, a backup for the full-time emergency management coordinator. So I don't think anything's changed thus far with his job description or his charges in the wake of the coronavirus response. But while there's only one emergency management coordinator, there are quite a few staff members that are involved in a response like this, both at the regional level as well as at the county. And Penn State University has a emergency management coordinator, Brian Bittner, that works closely with Sean Kaufman too. So I don't want you to think it's just a one-person bench. There is some depth there, and there's certainly quite a bit of regional and local and county-wide cooperation that goes into this response too.
Okay, thank you both.
Chief.
Yeah, I have a point. I will reach out to Dr. O'Donnell to make him aware, to see if he can send something out on the communication with the students. And then to also follow up with Laura's comment about the leaves. I actually submitted a news article to Nick to try to incorporate something with public works and burning leaves is against the ordinance. So hopefully that'll get taken care of this weekend.
Thank you.
Okay. I did want to add one thing to Dave's report, which is not completely COVID, but it's related, which is that because Laura and I are the only board members who've been through more than one budget cycle, there may be questions about where we stand financially with other board members or with the public. And essentially, I just wanted to say, for as long as I've been on the board, we've always maintained a very large fund balance. There were a couple times when there was a question, should we have so much in the fund balance? We're at the very top of the suggested range. And the decisions were always, well, it's better to have it there just in case we need it. It's not, a problem having money in savings. So essentially at this point, we have enough money in reserve to cover anything that I could possibly see happening as a result of this in terms of taxes. Even if there's a huge decrease in taxes, we have enough reserve to handle everything in our budget this year. If there's an extended change in our tax receipts, we may have to have some hard decisions for next year's budget or the year after that. But for this year, we're actually in very good shape financially. So I don't think we have anything to be concerned about, like having to make an amendment in the next few months so that we're not, to avoid laying people off or even having to lay people off to keep things balanced, because we do have the reserves to do that. So I suspect at the end of things, we'll be closer to the bottom end, but still in the range of what the recommended reserves are. So
Thank you.
let me mention that. Yeah. So is there anything else as far as status for COVID? Lisa.
Sorry, you just reminded me of one other item. I think Dave mentioned in the report the State College Borough website, or not, but that is a real hub of information at this point, and there's a lot of different venues that information is getting out online right now. And one thing I didn't notice on the borough website, and maybe it is in there somewhere, are some of the small business loans and payroll protection and different things people can apply for. If that can maybe be highlighted somewhere. I didn't really dig too deeply in there, but I was noticing that was one thing that was a little bit harder to find, even if they want to direct people to county, state, and federal resources from there, just to make it easy. That's been one page that I've sent people to for information. I think we were all kind of directed to send people there. So if that could be made very easy to navigate, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we can do that. And the Pennsylvania Municipal League has some good resources on that too. We can use to kind of amplify. Could I just note that there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Or I don't know if you want me to get to that one.
Sure, if,
Okay. It comes from, it's Dr. Bob Allen, who's on here too. He's muted. I don't know, Dr. Allen, if you want me to ask the question, or I can phrase it, or if you want to unmute and ask it, well, I'll just read it. It says, does Ferguson have a policy for evictions, rental, and lease renewal issues in this coronavirus period beyond the recent Supreme Court decision? The answer to that is no. We don't have anything in place locally beyond what protections are offered by the state and or the county. We don't have any local ordinances that address housing and evictions at this point. There are things that we've talked about, that this board's talked about in the past, that would offer some additional protections, but as of right now, we don't have any regulations in place.
Okay, so I guess if there are no other questions or comments at this point, we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. First item under unfinished business is a public hearing on an ordinance of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, adopted pursuant to Section 2.25 of the Home Rule Charter, authorizing the township manager to exercise certain specified powers for purposes of maintaining, protecting, and promoting the health and safety of the community.
Thank you. At the regular meeting on March 16th, the board authorized advertisement of an ordinance for public hearing, which, if adopted this evening, would provide the manager with additional authority to enter into contracts, approve certain expenditures, and promulgate regulations in the interests of providing for the public health, safety, and welfare for the duration of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the ordinance advertised for public hearing this evening.
And that is attached. If there are any questions or comments, this is a public hearing, so we can ask if anyone in the public cares to comment on it. Either unmute, we don't have a big group, or just send a chat notice that you want to say something. Okay, seeing none, first I'll start with the motion.
I move the Board of Supervisors adopt the ordinance authorizing the township manager to exercise certain specified powers for the purposes of maintaining, protecting, and promoting the health and safety of the township.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions? Okay, I think we discussed it pretty thoroughly. Oh, sorry.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Sure.
So the ordinance is for the duration of the pandemic, and who's the authority that gets to define the period of the pandemic? Is it the governor?
It would run parallel with the disaster declaration issued by the Center Region Council of Governments.
Okay,
Basically, when that declaration would expire, so would the additional authority enabled by this ordinance.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? If not, this will be a roll call vote, because it is an ordinance.
This is presented as ordinance number 1054. Mr. Miller,
Yes,
Mr. Mitra,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes,
Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Danini.
Yes.
the motion carries. Next item is the consent agenda, which is in the agenda. Several items. Anything that anyone would care to pull off the consent agenda? In that case, I would take a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Motion to approve. Sorry.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a request from a board member concerning the OW house property. This is from Laura, so I'll ask her to present the item.
Thank you, Steve. I'm unmuted, right?
Yep.
Okay. The focus of this agenda item is to discuss sending a letter from the Ferguson Township Board to the Borough Council that expresses our hopes for working together to not just maintain, but to improve the quality of life in our West College community. I've heard of the noise, dust, and safety issues at the former Houtz property since taking office more than 4 years ago. In fact, the Ferguson board in a previous iteration decided that in order to preserve the quality of life of residents in the West College community, we no longer would allow uses that weren't specifically allowed in the TSD zoning district or in spirit consistent with the nature of the district. That is why you now see that the Ferguson part of the former Houtz lot is mostly bare, because a construction laydown yard, a heavy freight transfer and resting place, is not a use allowed in the TSD and is not consistent with the spirit of the TSD, a walkable mixed-use corridor of commercial and residential whose character is maintained by a rigorous design manual. When the most recent construction laydown yard use was granted by State College Borough, the Ferguson Board, administration, and police began getting complaints about noise, dust, and safety. Even with the Ferguson part of the old Houtz lot not being included in the permission granted on the borough side, there is great impact to the neighborhood. In this case, because of our shared lot, that enabled the landowner to use the Ferguson side of the lot to house excavated soil and build a temporary access road that would carry the freight transfer vehicles through the laydown yard. All of this impacts the quality of life for the West College community directly and indirectly. Continuing this heavy industrial use affects character, safety, and infrastructure. Ferguson Township has already invested in the streetscape of this area, the TSD. And when the pandemic is under control, one of our priority projects is to re-examine the TSD zoning. It is my sincere hope that the citizens and governments of the borough and Ferguson can work together to envision and implement zoning that's beneficial to the West College community. I believe that that goes hand in hand with not continuing to allow these long-term temporary uses that are detrimental to quality of life. Therefore, it's my hope that the Ferguson board will agree to write a friendly letter to the Borough Council to make sure they understand the negative impact that this heavy industrial freight transfer use is having on the surrounding neighborhood, and to encourage them to work with Ferguson in improving the quality of life in our shared West College community now and in the future. Thank you.
Okay. I guess start with, you want to make a motion, and
I'm sorry, Steve, did you say?
did you want to make a motion?
Oh,
to send
okay,
the letter,
sure.
or did you want to have discussion first? So let you go with what, this is your item, so.
Okay, I guess I would make a motion first, if it's not too nebulous based on what I've said, to just write a friendly letter of correspondence to the State College Borough Council from the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors in regard to utilizing areas in that district for uses consistent with those zoning districts.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion or a second, then is there any discussion? Lisa?
I in thinking about this, I am supportive in that I think it's important that we support residents there who are having long-term issues with things that are occurring outside of our boundary. And I think other things have been attempted to try to address this. And I appreciate the idea of a friendly letter, making them aware of the issue formally, and in hopes of possibly working together on the long-term quality of life in that area.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a sort of question. Is there the use of the Ferguson part of the land where they are essentially using it as a temporary road of sorts? Is that allowable under law? Or are there things that we can do there to stop that use?
It's an access to their property. It's not a road in that sense. What's currently out there is permitted by the township zoning. What's
Mhm.
currently being, I guess, what the current use of the Ferguson Township side of the property is compliant with our zoning. There is a non-conforming pre-existing use of a parking lot that is continued to be permitted to be used in that same manner, but that doesn't conform to current zoning standards. It's just because it predated the
Mhm.
regulations there that it's allowed to continue to be used in that capacity.
Could I also add, this is my understanding, in terms of the former house property is multiple lots. So it's a little bit confusing, but in terms of the lots that are being used for specifically the construction laydown yard, there is a temporary access road on the Ferguson part of that lot. And that is something that is permissible for any landowner in Ferguson Township to construct something called a temporary access road. And I believe there's a duration of 2 years. And so that's what I understand that is.
Well, it also depends on whether that road is a separate access than their driveway, than the primary access for their lot. If it were just the only access to the lot and it just happened to be used as a construction access road, work on a project on another, on another one of those lots, then it would just be looked at as a driveway. I don't see how there'd be any restrictions or any regulations that would apply that would limit the length of time that they could use that for. I'm not exactly sure what the condition is out there, whether they have a separate driveway to access the lot and this different access road for a construction vehicle. If that were the case, then that's how it would be looked at. But if this is just their driveway that they're using for construction vehicles, we wouldn't limit the length of time they were allowed to use it as such.
I guess that I think I might have seen that language in the attached document, but I might be wrong about that, the temporary access road. But I also would wonder, and I know this is getting a bit into the weeds in terms of, like, I wouldn't be saying probably this stuff in the letter or anything, but in terms of what you said, Dave, about a driveway into the lot for their construction laydown yard, I guess I would say that I wouldn't think that would be okay because construction laydown yard isn't a permissible use of that lot on the Ferguson side. So to have a driveway into it would not really be permissible, but I still think that they can still have it based on this access road idea.
Yeah, I think if there has to be a way to access every lot. And if a driveway was being used regardless, irrespective of the use of the lot, whether that use conformed with our zoning district or did not, or whether it was in the municipality or not, in this case, it doesn't change that there would be a allowable access, vehicular access for that lot. And without restrictions being placed on it for the kinds of vehicles that access it or the weight, the gross vehicle weight of those vehicles, I don't see how we would even enforce any regulations related to what that kind of access would be used for. If it were construction vehicles accessing it, how would that be different than a private passenger car or a public transit or anything like that? We just don't have anything that's in place that would apply, that would look at the type of use and say, hey, this is not an allowable use, so we wouldn't allow access for it.
I see. That makes sense what you're saying to me. So what you're saying is since they just, again, we're kind of a little bit in the weeds, but I'm always interested to learn more about zoning. So since that driveway wasn't there before, did they then get a driveway permit, or do they not need to get a driveway permit because it goes onto a private lane, private alley?
If they were getting a new curb cut, they would need a
Oh,
driveway permit.
gotcha.
But I don't know that that was the case with this.
No, just a fence cut.
A fence cut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking I would vote against this because I was thinking more in terms of giving suggestions to the borough, and for historic reasons, I would have a problem voting for that. But a suggestion or request that they work with us to come up with solutions to problem we've identified, I'm fine with. So
I'm so glad, Steve. I was thinking a lot about what you said. It was meaningful. Thank you.
also, I know that Wes is on, and this is probably the issue he was concerned with. So if Wes, if you wanted to make any comments, feel free to either unmute and make a comment or go and chat. If not, that's fine too. Okay, not noticing any.
I would like to make a comment,
Oh.
if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you. I am Wes's neighbor.
Oh, okay.
There's a house between us, and our whole property abuts that property. So we're very personally affected by it. As well as, they're working on the water detention pond back there, and our house vibrates, but that's all what has to happen. But for example, we have a concern that once construction starts back up, and they're maybe behind in their time frame, they already have told us they're going to work 6 days a week. So our concern is that they're going to try to work 7 days a week. Now, I would appreciate your letter, because we're caught in the middle. Like, do we go to a borough meeting and ask for something? Do we go to the township meeting? So with these kinds of situations, we don't necessarily feel that we have a voice in the borough meetings because we're not borough residents. So I would appreciate that idea of some communication between Ferguson Township and the borough around this whole issue.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just note, I think we had somebody join us by conference call. Somebody dialed into 3799.
Wes Lee.
Oh, it's Wes. Okay, Wes is dialed in now. I thought, Wes, I apologize. Rhonda was speaking, so I didn't want to interrupt her
Right,
to.
right. I got that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Okay, Wes, go ahead.
Am I on?
As good as we get. Can everybody here on Zoom, Wes, speak okay? All right, I
Yeah.
think we got you, Wes.
I have a Flintstone computer, so I'm a little behind the curve. I just wanted to say that I have taken 2 meetings with Tom Fontaine about this issue, and we regularly talk with the Clayco Super. And I don't know what to do about the dirt pile. I would have to say, so far, everyone has been very cooperative. I've been generally impressed with how careful the truck drivers are. They really have been careful. And when someone asks to have a no idling sign put up, it was put up. Extra stop signs were put up. That break in the fence for the new entrance, because of the future very large tractor and trailers that will bring the preforms in. And so I don't know, I don't know what else could be done. They needed an opportunity to have a smooth access, and the Buckout Street entrance to the lot, I don't think could provide that. That's how I understand it. Anything in terms of the township and the borough cooperating, I would advocate for. So I don't know what it's going to be like in the summer with dust, but if there is a problem, I have a strong feeling that the super will have wet down trucks and so on, because when we had a dust problem this winter, Tom Fontaine told them that they needed to sweep, and they did. They now have a sweep truck on site. So it's not perfect, and I'm glad Laura did what she did. I don't know what else to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
Steve, everybody.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd also like
Thanks,
to
Wes.
mention, we've had 2 meetings at our house with representatives from Penn State, from the Clayco construction and the neighborhood that have been quite, especially the second one, have been respectful, and, you know, it's just a difficult situation, but they have done their best, I think, to work with us around most things.
Good.
So I'm thinking in this case, or is there any use of writing to the party that's actually doing the construction, as well as Penn State? So is it are there any benefits to keeping everyone informed of this and our request going to all parties?
My thought on that would be that the word would be passed if we focused our message on the borough, that the message would be passed to those parties through the borough because of this permit that they hold. And so it sounds like they're being cooperative when those messages are passed at this point. But maybe thinking about that if there's problems in the future.
Yeah, we can start with the borough. That's fine. I just thought I'd.
Yeah, I appreciate that thought.
Lisa?
I didn't have anything else.
Oh, I thought you were trying to get my attention. So any other questions or comments then? In that case, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. I guess maybe Dave and Laura could work together on the wording of the letter. I don't think it needs to go to the whole board before going out. Thank you.
I can, it does, I mean, we can, it doesn't matter either way. It's not like a big rush at this point, so.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I would appreciate assistance in writing it. I'm not entirely sure what the messages we're trying to convey, to be
Sure.
honest. So any help from the board would be greatly
Yeah.
appreciated on my end.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is staff and committee reports, COG committee reports. I think the only committee meeting now is the executive committee. We did meet a couple weeks ago just to prepare the business of finalizing a contract with Eric Norenberg. Made a couple other personnel decisions along with that. We have a meeting tomorrow, which is mostly routine business and, you know, approving things that need to be approved. And we'll get an update on the financial impacts of the COVID on various departments. That will be a Zoom meeting. So if you want to check that, I believe it's at 12:15 tomorrow. And I would assume that all the contact information is on the COG website. If nowhere else, it will be in the executive committee agenda section of it. So, and I believe that's the only COG meeting going on now. So, Laura.
Hi, Steve. I just have a question about the Park and Rec comp plan.
Right.
So that motion, I take it, was made. I'm sorry, I'm getting used to the new process. So it looks like in the March executive committee, the motion was made then to.
Right, to accept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry if I missed it, did we get a copy of all the comments from all of the different municipalities on that?
I believe we did. If not, I know that.
I don't remember I remember ours. I don't remember seeing other municipalities.
I can check. I'm sure they're on the last executive committee agenda then.
Oh, okay.
If you can't find them there, if you just check the COG website and if the agenda packet from the last meeting is there. If not, let me know and I can forward it to you.
Okay, okay. And they will be included in the final draft of the comp plan as an appendix.
Right.
Okay, great. Did the Park Authority, I know they've met. I don't know if it was before that executive committee meeting. Did they respond at all to those comments or did they just accept them? And...
No, that would just accept it as part of the.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those were the only questions I had. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Then I guess we will move to the staff reports, starting with manager.
Just a couple of things that are worth highlighting, most of my report was covered earlier this evening. As you can probably imagine, a lot of my time and the time of the senior leadership of the township has been consumed in response to this pandemic and making sure that municipal operations are carrying forward and that staff is taken care of. In non-coronavirus related items, the Ag Tourism Committee, the Chamber of Business and Industry of Center County, and the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau met on April 30th. We met virtually, of course, talked about some of their latest initiatives, which include a signage promotional campaign. Right now, it's just conceptual. There were some renderings that were done by the consultant assisting in the Ag Tourism Initiative. And the committee is planning on doing some evaluations of local sign ordinances of what businesses might be open to, and then carrying that conversation forward into the coming months as we try to put something more concrete together and get something rolling. So look for that. It's pretty cool. I think the concepts were pretty well done by the marketing consultant. We received 2 responses to the request for proposals that was issued by the assistant to the manager of firms interested in conducting the fire station needs assessment for the township. As the board may recall, there is a budget of $25,000 for that effort included in the 2020 operating budget. We're hoping to have a recommended award, if we do recommend an award, on the April 20th meeting agenda, or at least a request for some additional direction there. We are having interviews with both firms that responded in the coming weeks to get some answers to some outstanding questions that we have relative to their responses. And copies of each response have been sent to Steve Baer, the Center Region Fire Director, for his input and assessment. Other than that, I have nothing additional to report unless there are any questions.
Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the Public Works Director's report.
Good evening. My report is in your packet. And I believe you're aware of the level of service in the Public Works Department, but I can answer any questions you might have. I do have a report that goes over the status of our construction projects. As you know, most of those are either suspended or haven't started. And most of our staff is working remote. Apologize for my sound of my voice. There are some inhalers that I'm taking because of the lung condition I had earlier, and sometimes it affects my throat. But I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Dave? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Laura, did you have something? We're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Weird. I just wanted to say thanks, Dave Modricker, and I hope you feel better soon. That's a bummer.
Thank you very much. It's not the time that you want to feel this way,
No,
but,
it's not.
but every day, I believe I'm improving. So thank you.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Okay. Then we have the planning and zoning director's report.
I can give a brief report in Jenna's absence this evening. So the report is in your packet. There's some active plans that we're in the process of reviewing. Reviews for those continue as we're able. The applicants have been gracious enough to grant a 90-day extension on those review periods. So while we are continuing to conduct reviews, particularly internally of land development proposals, we understand that there's some delay with organizations and agencies that have review authority that are beyond our influence. And so we're kind of beholden to their schedules a little bit. Things like potable water and fire protection and transit and other agencies that have a role to play in our land development review process have understandably delayed our review of some of these, but we are pressing on. There is, let's see, a zoning hearing board meeting that's scheduled in May. Request for variance that's on that is in the rural agricultural zoning district corridor overlay. This is the Islamic Society of Central Pennsylvania. The board already had an opportunity to review that request for variance. This is relative to the floodplain conservation guidelines of our zoning ordinance, but that's not until May. Other than that, activity in the planning department is fairly slow. We are not accepting zoning permit applications, and we are kind of catching up on some older projects. So they're making good progress in things that maybe were on hold a little bit as the department reviewed land development proposals and zoning permit applications. There's some added free time to spend on the bigger picture initiatives. I know they are planning on having a virtual planning commission meeting, which would be next Monday, the 13th. So given the success of this evening, I think there's reason to be optimistic that that will go over without a hitch.
Are there any communications to the board that we haven't already addressed? Seeing none. The next only calendar item would be next meeting is April 20th. My assumption is we'll be doing it just like this, because I don't think anything's going to be changed by that time. So, anything else? Is there a motion to virtually adjourn?
So moved.
We are virtually adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank